Once upon a time, this was the parish church of Latheron in the county of Caithness. Today it's the Clan Gunn Centre and Museum, and indeed has been so for the last 20 years. This is a special occasion for members of the Clan Gunn Society, for it's the first day of one of their triennial get-togethers here on their home territory. This year, nearly 100 guns have assembled from various parts of the world and warmly welcomed as old friends by their acting chief or commander, Iain Gunn of Banniskirk, and his wife Bunty, who live at Sweeney House just a few miles north along the road. There's a full programme ahead for these people over the next 7 days, from touring Caithness and crossing the Pentland Firth to Orkney, seeing sites of special interest and attending their annual general meeting, and lunches and dinners held in their honour. They start this afternoon with a visit to the annual Highland Games at Halkirk. But first of all, of course, a look around this focal point of clan heritage with an introduction from Iain Gunn.
This is really the focal point of the clan because we have no ancestral castle. This is the old parish church of the parish of Latheron, which was really the most heavily gun-populated parish during the 19th century. So it is a very important building in its own right. There are many guns buried in the cemetery here, including the parents of Neil Gunn. The church itself is 1735. The new bit is about 1800. We acquired this building as a society in 1975, and we set up the Clan Gunn Heritage Trust to maintain the building and to set up an exhibition here. And the building was opened, the exhibition was opened by Lord Furzer in 1985. We tried to tell the story of the clan here.
And amongst all the gun-related artefacts and information here, there's one new acquisition Iain is particularly proud to point out: a plaster reproduction of a 17th century stone effigy discovered near Boston, Massachusetts.
You'll then see the very interesting account of the expedition of Prince Henry Sinclair, Earl of Orkney, to America 90 years before Columbus got there, and the contribution that we believe the guns played, because an essential part of the evidence of this expedition is the stone, the Westford Knight stone, which is near Boston, Massachusetts. The Clan Gunn Society of North America has very kindly donated the replica of the stone, and after I'd finished, I suggested we go up to that corner, and Lynn Robinson, who has been very much the instigator with others of the project, will hand it over officially to the trustees on behalf of the Clan Gunn Society of North America.
So from a sword and the faintly revealed arms of Clan Gunn on a shield, on a carved stone in the New World, it seems that a Gunn, Sir James Gunn, set foot in America almost a century before Columbus, and thereby hangs a tale indeed. But it was soon time for these guns to set off for a bit of truly Highland entertainment on Scottish soil.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure once again to ask our Chieftain, Lord Thursall, to declare the games open.
Thank you. Welcome to the Halkirk Highland Games. For over 40 of these, you have come together and asked me to be your tutor. And in the last few years, I have been supported by the commander of Clan Gunn and a number of his clansmen. But this Highland Games in Halkirk is rather special because we also have with us the chief of Clan Sinclair, the Earl of Caithness, Malcolm 20th Earl of Caithness. So I am well supported today by clansmen all over. Also, brilliantly supported by a cast of athletes, dancers, fighters, and shotgun specialists who we can have you go with play pigeons. And I can assure you that with this fella, we shall have a first-class games. I'm grateful to, on behalf of the committee, for the excellent music that's been provided to the march by the Strathclyde Police Fight Band. We are glad to have them with us once again, and I know we shall enjoy their playing through the games. So now, just falls to me to commend the competition to you and to wish you a happy time here in Halkirk, and let the games commence.
Old Boston with the 28th way.
Well, the Gunns have every reason to be particularly proud today, for one of the clan members, Alistair Gunn, doesn't just set local records. He is the Highland Games World Heavyweight Champion. And the Gunn banner is well to the fore in the hospitality tent, with its stars and buckle symbols and the old Scottish ship of centuries ago, the Berlin. But at the end of the afternoon, another ship with rather more power in its innards leaves harbour from John O'Groats, transporting our friends across the Pentland Firth to Orkney. So, as they vanish off into the misty waters of the Firth, we'll sit back and let Commander Iain Gunn take us now on a journey into the past to hear something of the clan's origins and early days in these northern lands of Scotland.
The Clan Gunn is one of the oldest clans in Scotland. The name father is Gunny, who was a grandson of Svein Aslefson, who was a great Viking, who was the kingmaker or the earl maker in the North Eldom, and who was known as the ultimate Viking. He lived at Guernsey in Orkney, And Gunny was, in fact, married to a granddaughter of Earl Ronald, who was the builder of St Magnus Cathedral. But we are not just all Norse. Ragnhild's father was a descendant of the ancient Pictish Mormons of Caithness. So the Gunns are really a mixture, we believe, of the Picts and the Norse. And although the male line came from Orkney, and our earliest origins on that side are Norse, we are very much a mixture. We established in Caithness in the 12th century, and perhaps the most famous early chief was Snakel Gunnison, who was a son of Gunny, and it was he who is believed to have built Castle Gunn on the coast of Caithness. He also had rights to the earldom of the Norse earldom of Orkney, but unfortunately he murdered his cousin and was attainted as a result. And then when he went off to Norway to plead his case, he got involved in a rebellion against the King of Norway and lost all his rights to Orkney. So from really the 12th, 13th century, the Gunns were very much a Caithness family, and that, I suppose, was the early establishment of the clan in Scotland. Castle Gunn is just a rock now. It's a stack of rock about 6 miles south of Wick. There are some signs of building on it, but it was really a very small fortress, and it was probably used only when the clan or the chief was attacked, and it certainly wasn't big enough for full-scale residence. It was burnt, it is said, by the King of Norway, as an early Gunn chief is reputed to have married a daughter of the King of Norway when he still had a wife back in Scotland. She came across to Caithness with her dowry of gold, and the Gunn chief is said to be more interested in the gold than in his wife, and arranged for the ship to be wrecked by placing beacons in the wrong place. In fact, the ship did go down and the princess was drowned, and the story is that she was buried at the site of the Albavision stone, which we have at the clan centre, copies of which we have at the clan centre. Because of our strong connections with Orkney, we always make a point of including a visit to Orkney in our triennial gathering of the clan. And this year we are covering some of the sites associated with our Norse ancestors, but perhaps not quite as many as we would like.
But there is a limit to what one can cover comfortably of Orkney's rich heritage in a couple of days. And despite the fog settling in on the second day, the weather stayed fair on that first Sunday in Orkney's main town, Kirkwall, where morning service in St Magnus Cathedral held a special significance for the Gunn congregation. Not only was it built by the Norse Earl Romvald, from whom the clan claims descent, but today one of the clan members, Tom Jameson from London, is singing Pie Jesu from Forey's Requiem. And after a look at the 16th century Earl's Palace and the Bishop's Palace, part of which dates back to Norse times, it was off to the famous site of even earlier days still. And, who knows, even earlier Gunn ancestors. The Stone Age domestic settlement of Skara Brae, uncovered after a storm in 1824. One of the finest sites in Europe of its kind, it gives a vivid insight of how people of the Neolithic age lived on this treeless, windswept island 5,000 years ago. But there is access to another of the prehistoric sites of Orkney, the chambered cairn of Maeshowe, if you're prepared to bend a little. It was raided by Vikings in the 12th century. They broke into the chamber through the top of the mound, and they left their carvings and runic graffiti on the walls. Ingebjorg is the fairest of the women.
Straight ahead of us, the Ring of Brodgar, and you'll notice several mounds on the left there, and a big mound, two big mounds on the right here. These mounds aren't burial mounds. They seem to have been built for the purpose of standing on them and making measurements or watching the moon. I'll mention very briefly before we go to it the main features of the circle. First of all, these stone circles were built to complex geometrical patterns. This is near a perfect circle to within at least 1 part in 100. Originally, they think there were 60 stones, evenly spaced at 5-degree intervals. So it's a perfect circle to within 1 part in 100.
Yet another of Orkney's magnificent prehistoric sites, which just has to be notched up by any visitor. Although there is an undoubted atmosphere which can be sensed by the sensitive standing on the ground, it's from above that one really appreciates the symmetry of the Ring of Brodgar. But Orkney is made up of no less than 67 islands, and one is due to be visited by the Gunns, Schappensee, a few miles across the bay from Kirkwall. Fertile and famous for its good quality beef cattle, Schappensee has some very literary connections. At Balfour Castle, the Gunns were told of one of them by their hostess for the day, Mrs. Catherine Zavadsky.
Has anybody, I wonder whether anybody's read Robert Louis Stevenson's novel Kidnapped? Well then, right. Well, it's only just quite recently been proved beyond all shadow of doubt that he was actually a Balfour. His mother's name was Balfour, and he actually stayed here during the time that he wrote Kidnapped. And he used David Balfour from here as the model for the hero of the book. And you see that turret right up above the front door, you can see it in the mist. Well, in the story, there's a wicked Uncle Ebenezer who tries to get David Balfour to climb up a turret, hoping he'll fall off it so that he'll inherit the money. But the moon comes out from behind the clouds at the right moment, and he sees that the steps are dangerous, so he doesn't fall off the turret. Well, that's the turret that Robert Louis Stevenson used to illustrate that part of the story. And the strange thing is that it was actually...
And while the party enjoy lunch and a look around the castle, I wonder whether any of the members of the Clan Gunn Society USA are aware that on the other side of the island from here, a family called Irvin emigrated to America in the 1760s. In 1783, they had a son, and as loyal supporters of the revolutionary cause, they called him Washington Irvin. He became America's first internationally known successful writer and a friend of Sir Walter Scott. But before the ferry arrives to take them back to mainland Orkney, there was time for those feeling energetic to indulge in a spot of practice for that evening's after-dinner dancing at the Ayr Hotel in Kirkwall. so ended this stay in Orkney. And next day, back to mainland Scotland and Caithness. But before we rejoin them in the land of their more recent ancestors, let's hear more about the clan from Iain Gunn.
Originally, the clan was based on Clythe, Castle Gunn on the east coast of Caithness, and even earlier, going back to Norse times, Duncansby. But after the battle with the Keiths, or main skirmishes with the Keiths, the clan really broke into three families, and the senior line went down to Kildonan, which was known as Strath of Guns, and the second family, the Robson Gunn, settled in Braemore, which is just below Morven and Maidenpap in the south of the county, and the third major family settled at Cattig and Derlet in the centre of the county. But really the Gunns, from having at one stage owned pretty well the whole of Caithness, were pushed into the hilly parts and the poorer parts by the Sinklers, who became the principal family in Caithness.
Kildonan is a name that's associated with a lot of people having to leave and seek their fortunes elsewhere, having to emigrate. Were the Gunns amongst those numbers then?
A number of Gunns were cleared in the clearances in the early part of the 19th century. Although Kildonan was known as the Glen of Gunns, of course there were many other clans involved as well, but a number of them went in the Selkirk expedition to Canada, and they were amongst the early settlements of the Red River settlement at Winnipeg. So in fact many Gunns were cleared out of Kildonan and the neighbouring glens of Strathhalladale, and even there were some also from Strathneva, which is in the Mackay country.
You mentioned Derlet there. Is Derlet a place of special significance to the clan, and to you personally? What are your feelings about it?
Well, Derlet is one of our favourite spots. It's on the face of it a very bleak area, but we have this little Gunn cemetery, and a lot of my ancestors are buried there, and just over the wall is this lovely gorge and the old ruin of Derlet Castle. Derlet Castle, rather like Castle Gunn, in fact was just a little fortress. It was probably no more than a room thick, and it was probably again used just when the people were in danger. I doubt very much whether they'd lived there for any length of time, but they regarded it, I suppose in some ways, as it was in earlier times, a place where you dashed to in times of danger.
What sort of position, Iain, did the clan have in Caithness throughout the years? Were they a pretty powerful clan, or were they dominated by others, or what?
The Gunns were at the peak of their power in the 13th century, when Caithness was still very much Norse part of the country. But as the kings of Scotland became more powerful, other families came in, like the Sinklers and the Keiths, who became our hereditary enemies, in particular the Keiths. We had a long feud with them for over 500 years, and there was an attempt in 1478, some people say it was 1464, to get the two clans to come together and reconcile their differences. But we met, there's an arrangement made to meet at St. Tara's Chapel at Achergill, and the arrangement was that the two clans would come with 12 horsemen aside. When the Gunns got there, they discovered that the Keiths had come 2 men to a horse, and the Gunns in fact were outnumbered, and the then chief was killed with a number of his sons. We continued therefore to be at odds with the Keiths until in 1978, when we had a reconciliation with the Keiths at Achergill, and we have reached an agreement of friendship for the future. We haven't said anything about the past, but we said we'd be friends in the future.
When people think of the Scottish clans, people from abroad, etc., they always seem to associate them with the Jacobite rebellions. But in actual fact, the Gunns didn't have any involvement at all with the Jacobites, did they?
The Gunns weren't involved in the Jacobite rebellion, I think largely because they were Protestant, but also they were very much dependent on the Earls of Sutherland, who were also Protestant and on the Hanoverian side. So although I believe there may have been one or two odd Gunns, the Gunns certainly weren't there in an organised way. There were some Gunns in the Earl of Loudon's Hanoverian regiment, but they in fact didn't take part in Culloden.
What sort of reputation did the Gunns have as a clan? Were they a feuding, fighting lot, or were they fairly peacefully minded then?
The Gunns had a motto, out pax, out bellum, which is either peace or war, and it was either a case of, we're prepared for both. But they were a very fearsome clan. They really became very much almost a broken clan at times, because they were squashed in between the Sinklers and the Sutherlands and the Mackays to some extent on the west. And they normally got the job doing the dirty work for either the Sinklers or the Sutherlands. So they were very respected, but there was a time when all the clans tried to stamp them out. And one of our greatest victories was at Ben Graham at the end of Culloden, when Fortunes and Mackays joined us, and we put the Sinklers and Sutherlands to rout, which was something for quite a small clan.
And for such a small clan, the name Gunn has been prominent in several different fields.
Certainly in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, a number of Gunns made their mark in foreign service. The most notable one was Sir William Gunn, who was a Braemore Gunn, Gunn Robson, and he fought for the King of Sweden and then for the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, became a Major General in his army and a Baron of the Holy Roman Empire. We've recently discovered that he is in fact the ancestor of the Royal House of Belgium, Luxembourg and Liechtenstein, and many other royal houses of Europe through his daughter. After his time in this century, Sir James Gunn, the portrait painter, was a very distinguished Gunn, and of course perhaps our best known Gunn is Neil M. Gunn, the author, who was born not very far from here at Dunbeath, and who incidentally is an uncle of our current president, Dermot Gunn. His work is widely acclaimed throughout the world, as far as Japan and Russia, and we have a commemoration of his life and work at the Clan Centre. There are also, of course, a number of famous sects. We have Mansons, Georgesons, Wilsons, Williamsons, etc. And President Reagan wore a Clan Gunn smoking jacket, acknowledging his Wilson descent on his mother's side. And of course for people like Gloria Swanson, who I imagine was probably a clanswoman, although we never actually met up.
Well, the Swansons in our group of homecomers here are on their way to another of the places of interest on their itinerary, the Wick Heritage Centre, the largest voluntarily run museum in Scotland, where the displays have all been designed and created entirely by members of the Wick Heritage Society. One of its prime movers over the last 25 years is Iain Sutherland, a voice that's known to many.
Many Gunns in Caithness live down the east coast of the county, and if any of your forebears came from that area, Leinster, Latheron, Oakham or Wick itself, of course, it is almost certain that at one stage or another they would go to sea in boats exactly like these to catch herring. They would almost certainly be crofter fishermen, and in the 1860s, from Wick alone, there were 1,200 boats like this one. Leicester had over 100, in fact Leicester very nearly had 200. Dunbeath had 100. Latheron had nearly 100, the Latheron fishing district. And there were insufficient men on the coast of Caithness to man these boats, so they relied very heavily on immigrant labour. And that immigrant labour would walk clear across the north of Scotland. You've all, I'm sure, heard of the Highland clearances through your clan history, which certainly was involved in it. But many of the people, Mackay's, MacDonald's, from the west coast, would walk 130 miles to Wick to earn a living during the 3-month season. Sometimes it was 4 months, it depended. The herring lasted longer some years than others. And that then would earn them enough money either to pay their fares on the immigrant ships, mainly to Canada, on the east coast of the United States, or of course to eke out a subsistence living still here. And maybe another generation would go, or a later generation. Because I'm sure most of your connection with Caithness would be through your grandfathers or your great-grandfathers. That was the heavy period of immigration between the 1870 up to the First World War.
And that's only one small section of a very extensive exhibition representing life in Caithness over the last 200 years. Our Guns went on to visit many of the historic sites in their home territory, and prehistoric ones too, of which Caithness has an abundance, such as the Hill o' Many Stains at Clyth, many stones inset into the ground in precise fan-shaped pattern, the origin of which still remains a mystery, to the clearance settlement site at Bad Bay. This is all that remains to show where families had to try and wrest a living from a precarious clifftop site. So precarious indeed that it's said that children were tethered to prevent them straying. And just to see what a small croft house of more recent years is like, there was a visit to this 19th century cottage rescued from modernisation in 1993 by a committee chaired by Bunty Gunn. But it was in Bunty and Iain Gunn's own home, Sweeney at Leicester, that everyone got together for afternoon tea. And a really relaxing chance to chat. And, of course, to assemble for the commemorative picture.
What did he say? All right, his broad shoulder, don't bother. That's super, that's lovely. It's very steady for me. Stay where you are.
But old and beautiful as it is, Sweeney isn't an original Gunn domain.
The only two old houses associated with the clan were associated with the Gunns of Caithness, which is up at Derlet. Darmore House, which is close to Derlet, was the old seat of the Gunns of Caithness. Unfortunately, it is now no longer inhabited. And the family then moved down to Dale House, which they occupied for the major part of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, when the family, in fact, were the most prosperous of the clan. But they've now died out in Caithness, and the house it has moved out of the clan's possession.
What are your own feelings, Iain, as commander of the clan? How do you feel about this thing that we, for want of a better word, can call clanship today? You know, how important is it?
Well, some people would say that clanship is old-fashioned, we're looking back, but in fact we don't regard it as such, and we really regard ourselves as one big family. And one of the marvellous things about our gatherings and meetings of the clan in various parts of the world is how immediately everyone feels at home, feels that they are part of the family. And I think people do need roots wherever they are, and it is really tremendously impressive, particularly at clan gatherings in America, to see clansmen walking behind their tartan flags with great pride. They're obviously Americans first, but they have this very strong feeling that they're also Scots, and you know, we do believe that this is important for everyone in this modern age.
Now, although we ought perhaps to give the last word to the clan commander, I know Iain Gunn will agree that on this occasion we leave it to Al Gunn, President of the Clan Gunn Society of North America, who expressed the feelings of so many so aptly.
To me, Scotland has a particular feeling of freshness and a scent that touches the inner being of those who return to the land of their ancestors. Scotland is the warm, proud, generous, friendly people who populate this nation. And Scotland captivates the returning descendants of its dispersed children with its rich, historical, patriotic sites. Scotland provides the immigrant and the native alike with the beauty of glen, burn, loch, ben, and strath. Scotland shelters its people in fascinating cities, delightful villages, and royal boroughs. And my Scottish heritage is to me a source of great pride, as it is, I'm sure, to everyone of Scottish descent in the room tonight, and also to our absent brothers and sisters. I've heard it said that there are two kinds of people, those who are Scottish and those who wish they were. We wouldn't be gathered here if it wasn't for this soil from which we draw and our ancestors drew their strength. This place, these people, this Scotland. Ladies and gentlemen, the homeland.
The 22nd of July marked the beginning of the clan's Millennium Gathering, which on this occasion started off in Orkney. But Sweeney was the meeting point for others like myself, who joined in at the halfway stage in Caithness. And dare I say it, what a difference a few years makes. I'm referring, of course, to the younger generation who've shot up. Remember Charlotte, the toddler dancing on the steps at Balfour Castle? Now this young lady in the white t-shirt. And Tom Jameson, the schoolboy, whose singing delighted us so much in St. Magnus Cathedral. And I don't think that this really needs to be said. It's so obvious that the afternoon tea party at Sweeney, as always, goes with a swing and provides the perfect venue for catching up with news from old friends and welcoming new clan members. And at the end of the day, the gathering photo call of the week. Well, that was Wednesday. After that, for the next few days, all was split up into more manageably sized groups for visits around Caithness. I went along to Achigal Harbour, which was the start for a short walk south along the coast to the chapel of St. Tiers, and a few words about Achigal Tower on the north side of the bay.
That is Achigal Tower. It was built about 1460. It was owned, not built by the Keiths, but it was owned by the Keiths at the time of Helen of Braymore. That's where she was abducted to, and it's from those battlements that she threw herself to her death rather than to fall into the hands of the Keiths. Built about 1460. Originally it would have had a defensive wall around the outside. The wall around the outside now is just a garden wall, and there was also a moat that could be filled with water from the sea. It was originally on the lands of the Caithness. Now the Caithness got the lands because Snake Earl Gunnison killed Earl John and was basically disinherited. So the lands were given to Joanna, who may have been his daughter. We're not sure about that. And it then passed by marriage into the Freskins and the Dechaney families. And so the earldom of Caithness basically went to people like the Sinclairs. Had that not been the case, had Snake Earl Gunnison inherited, then perhaps Caithness would have been a largely gun county. That's pure speculation on my part, but that's when things go wrong for the guns, is when Snake Earl murders the last Norse Earl of Caithness and Orkney. Well, I think time is short, so I think we'll move off now to the Chapel of St. Tiers. It's a 6-minute walk along the beach here. There'll probably be cows in the field, but hopefully they'll move away.
And today this little cairn marks the spot which is believed to be the site of the chapel of this early missionary saint and the site of that 16th century battle which Iain Gunn told us about earlier on. One of the other places of interest which should always be included in a visit to the Northlands is the renowned and very special archaeological site, the Camster Cairns, burial tombs dating back to 4000 to 3000 BC. The round chambers inside are perfectly preserved, and once inside are big enough to stand upright and move around in, but getting in might be a problem for some. If you can't quite make it, these ancient stones surrounding the cairns provide a good seat in the sun, whatever their original purpose may have been. But particularly for visitors to the homelands by the name of Gunn, Kildonan Church is one of the most emotive places on the tour. For the story of how so many clansfolk had to leave the Strath a couple of centuries ago means a lot to their descendants.
In 1801, the parish of Kildonan had a reported population of 1,440. By 1831, that number had shrunk to 257. Humans were replaced with sheep. Now, clearances took place in almost every corner of the Highlands and the Islands between 1785 and 1854, but we are concerned especially with the parish of Kildonan. First clearances from Sutherland lands began in 1807. In 1813, removals began in Lower Kildonan, and in 1819 began the final clearance of Upper Kildonan. In 12 years, the way of life of thousands of people who dwelt on Sutherland lands had been utterly